The airport smelled of rain and coffee that morning when I returned home after 2 months abroad. My flight from London had landed before dawn, and I couldn't wait to see my wife. Emily, don't forget to subscribe my channel. I had missed her laugh, her gentle voice that always softened my hardest days, and the way her eyes seemed to speak before her lips ever did. The taxi pulled into our driveway. Just as the first light of day kissed the wet pavement, everything looked the same. The little porch swing she'd insisted on painting, sky blue, the garden she loved, even the white curtains fluttering through our bedroom window. But something felt off. I remember stepping out, dragging my suitcase, and noticing that the lights inside were still on. Emily was never one to leave the lights on through the night. As I unlocked the door, my heart beat faster, from excitement, from longing, from 2 months of silence and distance. But as soon as I stepped into the house, the air was thick. Not warm, not welcoming, just heavy. "Emily?" I called softly, my voice echoing through the living room. There was no answer. I walked toward the kitchen, expecting to find her preparing coffee like she always did whenever I came home from a trip. But instead, I found her sitting at the dining table, still wearing her nightdress, her hair messy, her eyes swollen red, and she was crying. At first I froze. My suitcase slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. She didn't even look up. "Emily?" I said again, moving closer. "What's wrong?" She looked up finally, and the sight broke something inside me. Tears streamed down her cheeks silently. No sobs, no words, just quiet, endless tears that said more than she ever could. Did something happen? I reached out, but she flinched. That flinch was sharper than a slap. I stepped back, confused, my chest tightening. "Emily, you have to talk to me, please." She stood abruptly, pushing the chair back. Her hands trembled as she wiped her cheeks. "You're back early," she said quietly. "I wanted to surprise you." She gave a broken laugh, one that sounded like pain wrapped in disbelief. "Surprises? Yes, that's what life's full of lately." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, she walked to the sink, her back to me. I could see her shoulders shaking. "I didn't think you'd come home so soon." "Emily, what's going on?" She turned slowly, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, fear, and heartbreak all tangled together. Then she said words that made the ground disappear beneath me. "I think we've lost our baby." Everything went still. The sound of rain against the window, the hum of the refrigerator. It all vanished. I couldn't breathe. "What?" Her voice cracked. "I went to the doctor last week. They couldn't find a heartbeat. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to ruin your project, your meetings. I kept hoping it was a mistake. But yesterday..." She broke home, sobbing. "Yesterday it happened." I staggered back, my throat burning. I hadn't even known she was pregnant. You were pregnant?" I whispered. Her eyes widened, realizing I didn't know. "You didn't read my messages?" I'd been traveling, working long nights. I'd seen her texts, but some days I'd just sent quick replies. "I'll call you later." "Love you?" I thought she understood. "I thought we were okay." "I told you," she said softly. "I told you I was late, that I was going to the doctor. You said you were in a meeting. I thought you knew." I ran a hand through my hair, my mind spinning. "Emily, I swear I didn't realize..." Her shoulders slumped. "You didn't realize because you weren't really here, Daniel." Her words struck deep, and she wasn't wrong. My work had taken all of me. I'd left her alone, told myself it was temporary, that she was strong enough to handle the loneliness. But now, looking at her, broken and trembling, I realized how cruelly wrong I'd been. "I'm sorry," I whispered, walking toward her again. This time she didn't flinch. She just stood there as I wrapped my arms around her. She cried into my chest, long, heart-wrenching sobs that soaked through my shirt. I held her tighter, my own tears falling. We stood like that for what felt like hours, saying nothing, breathing through pain that words couldn't heal. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were empty. "They said it wasn't my fault," she murmured. "But I can't stop thinking maybe if I had rested more, eaten better, called you sooner." "Don't," I said gently. "Don't blame yourself, please." She shook her head. "You weren't here, Daniel. You didn't see me every night talking to the baby. I was scared, but I thought you'd be back in time." Her voice broke again. "I just wanted you here." Those words, "I just wanted you here," burned deeper than any accusation. I cupped her face and kissed her forehead. "I'm here now. I promise, Emily, I'm not leaving again. Not for a while. Not until you're okay." She gave a small, broken nod. That night, after unpacking just the essentials, I sat beside her in bed. She lay facing the wall, silent. I stared at her back, at the way her hair fell across the pillow. I thought of all the moments I'd missed. Her excitement, her fear, the doctor visits, the way she must have smiled when she first heard the heartbeat, and the silence that came after. I reached out and touched her shoulder lightly. "Em?" She didn't respond, but I knew she was awake. "I'm sorry," I whispered again, "for not being here, for not reading your messages, for making you feel alone." A tear slipped from her eye and landed on the pillow. "I wanted you to hold me that night, Daniel," she said quietly. But the bed was empty. Her voice shattered something inside me. "I'll never let that happen again," I promised. But promises don't erase pain. They just sit beside it, hoping one day they'll mean something. Over the next few days, I stayed close. I cooked breakfast, cleaned the house, tried to make her smile. Sometimes she would, faintly. Sometimes she'd just stare at the garden where she used to sit with her tea, hands resting over her stomach. On the 5th day, I found her sitting there again, the morning sun on her face. She was holding a tiny knitted sock. I sat beside her quietly. "My mother knitted this," she said. She was so happy when I told her. I didn't even have the heart to call her yet. I took her hand. "We'll call together. When you're ready." She looked at me for a long time, her eyes full of a kind of sorrow that words can't soothe. "You know what hurts most?" she asked softly. "That I started to imagine our life with them. Their laughter, their first day at school, the way you'd teach them piano." I squeezed her hand tighter. "We'll have that dream again, Emily, someday." She shook her head. "It won't be the same child." And she was right. It wouldn't. But I also knew this loss didn't mean an ending. Maybe, in time, it would become part of us. A scar that didn't fade but stopped bleeding. That night, as we lay in bed again, she turned to me and whispered, "Do you ever think maybe this happened because we drifted apart?" I wanted to tell her no, that life was unfair, that fate was cruel, but deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she was right. Maybe the universe had been shouting for us to slow down, to look at each other, to remember love before ambition swallowed it whole. And now it was too late. I watched her fall asleep, her breath uneven, her fingers clutching the small sock like a lifeline. In that moment, I made a silent vow that no matter what, I'd rebuild us. I'd help her smile again, even if it took a lifetime. Outside, rain began to fall again. The same quiet drizzle that had greeted me when I came home. But this time it felt different. The storm wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside us both, and though neither of us said it aloud, we knew part of us had been buried with the child we never got to meet. Yet somehow, somewhere deep beneath the pain, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. The fragile belief that love, even shattered, could still find a way to heal. The following weeks passed in silence. Emily and I lived in the same house, shared the same meals, but there was a wall between us, invisible, unspoken, heavy. Sometimes she would stare at the nursery room we had painted before I left, the pale yellow walls mocking us with dreams that never came true. I tried to talk, to hold her, to make her laugh again, but grief had taken root in her heart like winter frost that refused to melt. One evening, I found her sitting by the window again. The house was dim, the scent of her chamomile tea still warm on the table. Outside, the garden lights glowed faintly in the mist. I pulled a chair and sat beside her quietly. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I keep hearing the heartbeat, Daniel. When the house is quiet, I hear it, and then it stops." Her voice cracked. I took her hand, feeling the cold in her fingers. "It's grief, love. It plays tricks on us. You missed the sound because it was hope." She looked at me then, tired eyes, fragile smile. "You talk like you understand, but you don't. You didn't carry them." "I didn't," I admitted softly, "but I lost them too. Emily, maybe in a different way, but I did." That was the first time she let me hold her since that morning I returned. Her tears soaked my shoulder again, but this time I didn't just stand there. I cried with her. It felt like we were both bleeding out all the pain we'd been keeping inside. 2 months later, healing wasn't sudden. It came in small, fragile steps. Emily started tending to the garden again, trimming roses, watering the tulips she had planted in spring. I started working from home, refusing every business trip my manager offered. We tried to fill the silence with life again. Soft music, evening walks, cooking together. One night as we sat by the fireplace, Emily asked, "Do you ever wonder what we'd be doing if they were still here?" "All the time," I said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe they were too pure for this world." I looked at her, the flicker of firelight painting her face in gold and shadow. "Or maybe they came just long enough to remind us what really matters." That made her look at me, really look, For the first time in months, something in her eyes softened. The wall between us began to crack. That night, when she reached for my hand under the blanket, I knew she was finally letting me in again. A letter I never sent. A few days later, while cleaning the study, I found an envelope hidden in the drawer. It had my name on it, Daniel. It was Emily's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity and fear won. Inside was a short letter, dated 2 weeks before I came home. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't find the courage to say goodbye in person. I wanted to tell you everything, about the baby, about how scared I was, how lonely this house felt without you. But every time I tried, I saw your tired face in those video calls, and I stayed quiet. You told me once that love means patience. I'm trying to be patient, but it hurts, Daniel. It hurts so much that sometimes I wonder if you'd be happier without me, without my silence, my sadness, my need for you. If something happens, please don't blame yourself. Just remember that for a little while, I carried something beautiful inside me, and that I loved you every single day. My hands trembled as I read. I sat there for a long time, staring at the ink that had bled slightly from her tears. She had been ready to leave me. Not physically maybe, but emotionally, and I hadn't even noticed. That night I went to her. She was reading in bed, the lamplight soft against her face. I sat beside her and handed her the letter. She froze. Her eyes widened as she saw what it was. You found it, she whispered. I nodded. Why didn't you tell me, Emily? Tears filled her eyes again. Because that was the night I almost gave up. I wrote that before the miscarriage, before everything fell apart. I thought I had lost you already. I took her hands gently. You didn't lose me. You never did, I just forgot to show up. She looked at me, her lip trembling. You came back too late. Her words hit hard, but I didn't argue. She was right. So instead I said, then let me stay long enough to make up for it. And she broke again, but this time into my arms. That night we didn't talk much. We just held each other, our pain shared, our hearts beating in rhythm again. For the first time in months, she fell asleep in my embrace. Spring came again. By April, sunlight filled the house once more. Emily had started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. One morning, she called me into her art room. Close your eyes, she said softly. I obeyed. Now open. On the easel stood a canvas, our garden, bathed in morning light. But in the middle of it, there was a small figure, half transparent, half made of light, a child's silhouette standing among the flowers. It's them, she whispered. Our baby. I stared at it, words stuck in my throat. The painting was breathtaking, not sad, not tragic, just peaceful. I wanted to paint what peace looks like, she said, her voice trembling but calm. Because I think they found it. I walked behind her and wrapped my arms around her. So did we. The letter to our child. That night, Emily suggested we write a letter, not to each other, but to the child we lost. We sat by candlelight at the dining table, a blank sheet between us. She started first. To our little star. We never got to hold you, but you lived in our dreams. You made us remember what love means. And though your time was short, your light stays with us. Thank you for reminding us to see each other again. Then she passed the pen to me. My hand shook, but I wrote, We never met, but you changed everything. Because of you, I learned what presence means. I promise your mother will never cry alone again. We folded the letter and buried it under the cherry blossom tree in our backyard. The same tree that was now full of white petals drifting like snow. Emily leaned against me as we watched them fall. Goodbye, she whispered. No, I said quietly, kissing her hair. Not goodbye. Just see you later. She smiled faintly. You really believe that? I have to, I said. Because hope is the only way love survives. 1 year later, a year passed. Life didn't forget what happened, but it began to heal around it. We still visited the tree sometimes, especially when the wind was soft. Emily would place a small flower there every spring. And one morning, she came to me with trembling hands, holding a white stick, a pregnancy test. I froze, afraid to hope. She smiled through tears. It's positive, Daniel. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both. I lifted her up and spun her. Both of us sobbing, laughing, terrified and thankful all at once. Later, we sat by the window, sunlight washing over us, and she whispered, I'm scared, Daniel. What if... I placed my hand over her stomach gently. Then we face it together. No more distance, no more silence. Her eyes softened, and she nodded. Together. The day of the ultrasound. Weeks later, we sat in the hospital room again. The same doctor. The same machine, the same silence that once broke her. But this time the silence didn't last. There it was. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. The tiny heartbeat that filled the room with life. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she gripped my hand tightly. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. "I do," I said, my voice breaking. "It's the most beautiful sound in the world." We left the hospital hand in hand, and for the first time since that morning I came home to find her crying. I felt the sun truly warm again. Epilogue. Every year, on the same rainy day I had returned from my trip, Emily and I sit by the cherry blossom tree. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we stay quiet. We never forget the child we lost. They are part of every heartbeat we hear now, every smile we share. Grief never really leaves. It just learns to live beside love. And on those quiet nights when Emily lies asleep beside me, I still whisper a thank you to the little soul who brought us back to each other. Because sometimes life's most